I have a little bit of experience myself. I think it's Father of the Year. I got to a point where I was like inventing things. Like I had all these you know what I mean? Like I was like, I would put like gym clothes and stuff by the door. Like I'm starting to work out tomorrow, but tomorrow would come and I'd be like, fuck,
Yeah,
no chance. And then you don't people, the mental desperation. Like I couldn't plan something 2 weeks from now unless I knew I had enough on me, right?
Yeah,
So
there was no vacations, was there, Tim? Right? We couldn't go.
No.
When I stepped on the ice, I never backed down, and I never stayed down.
And I was vicious, and I was malicious, and I don't care.
I'm alive. He's a freaking madman. Look at him going to town. That'll be a suspension.
Welcome, Joe Kelly, to the Raw Knuckles podcast. My partner, Tim Stapleton. Tim, Joe.
How you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
So we'll get started. And listen, Joe, I know you wrote a book called The Badge, Bars, and Beyond, coming out the end of the month. But before we get into the book, I want to get into Joe and get into Joe in the beginning. And I know you grew up in Cape Cod, which is certainly a tourist mecca in the summertime. But when the summer ends, there's a long winter. And in that long winter on Cape Cod, there's a lot of drugs and alcohol. And you grow up in that environment. How was your family life at home? Was there addiction in your family at all growing up? Would you grow up around the booze and the drugs? Obviously, high school, you must have seen it. But growing up at home, what was home life like?
My parents got divorced at an early age. I was 2. And my father's side of the family had a grandfather who was an alcoholic and an uncle who was an alcoholic. Another grandfather was an alcoholic. So, alcoholism ran through my father's side of the family pretty rapidly. I was raised by my mother at a young age, ended up moving in with my dad around 11 or 12, and then moved back in with my mom around 16, as a young kid, playing both sides of the street in terms of divorced parents. My upbringing was pretty normal for the most part. As a kid, I was very blessed as a baseball and football player. It paid for me to go to college. Where I partied like a rock star in college. But I was able to put that stuff down when I graduated from college to begin my life and career in law enforcement. That's how it started. But like you said, back in the day, unlike it is today, it was we went in the woods and drank some beers and something, and came back. And today, and I speak around the country, it's between the pills for everything you can think of, it's a different world today. So I'm very, very blessed to be where I am today.
What college you go to?
I went to Hartwick College in upstate New York. I went there to play baseball and football. And after, a year, I decided that 2 sports was too much. And I ended up sticking with football, where I finished all 4 years there.
So you got a degree in sociology when you left there. Why the first responders, your father and uncles were first responders, and was that kind of what led you down that path, or were you looking to go in a different direction?
Yeah, most of my life, as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a police officer. I think I was attracted to the attention and the power of the position. And as a young kid, always playing, cops and robbers and stuff like that. My family were more firemen. My one uncle was a police officer, but both my grandfathers were chiefs at fire departments. I believe one was in Brockton, the other one was in Stoughton. And, the laugh that they would have on me is like, when I became a police officer, oh, you took a right instead of a left. So, and as I got older, the reason why I wanted to, be a police officer was because, I was gifted athletically. I knew I was a person that didn't ever want to sit behind a desk. Football ended. I wasn't blessed to go, further than after college, but I was grateful because it paid for college. And I wanted to do something where I could still remain active, and that's what really, pushed me towards that career. And I loved helping people. I loved being of assistance to people within my community and the surrounding area.
Did you get involved in any of those like firemen versus policemen, like sporting events? I know there's a big hockey one in New York, right? But
So my father, to this day, he still plays hockey. He's part of the firemen, and they play the police and all that. The only thing I got into was late at night when I was working the evening, because I was a canine officer as well. I worked on the emergency response team for all southeastern Massachusetts, and we'd go by the fire department. They'd be all curled up in bed, and we'd hit the siren. So those guys were great. So it was always the tug of war. Calling them hose jockeys and them calling us stuff. So, but it was all fun. It was all fun stuff, and it was like being part of a team. Whether it was the Montreal Canadiens or it was my college football team. It was that camaraderie together. That really drew me to that profession as well, was being a part of a team. That's all I ever knew my entire life.
Yeah. Now, a lot of friends are cops. My brother-in-law was a cop. He got killed in the line of duty, Dan McCarthy, and a lot of friends that are cops. And it's funny, when I talk to them, I talked to a lot of friends of firemen and family members, firemen. And firemen are chill, they're cool. Cops are fucking cynical bastards. And I like, so, here you are in this position of, power, but helping people. What's the fucking dark side of being a cop? On the personal dark side of being a cop?
Yeah. To be honest with you, it's the stuff that we see on an everyday basis. It's the stuff that we see, and I think it's part of who I am as well, as always being a leader, a quarterback in college, a high recruited athlete coming out of high school. I was always the one giving the help. And when you go to the police academy, that's ingrained to you. We're there to help people. And that's that mentality. And I think it comes with guys too, with the ego and everything else that comes in. The biggest thing is for me, at least, and I think for a lot of officers and firemen, is the stuff that we see on a daily basis. We just stick that
shut it off
aside. We shut it on inside, where it becomes, we think that we become immune to it, but we're not immune to it. Subconsciously, that stuff goes on the inside. And that's why the divorce rate with, police officers are through the roof, because, what happens is, we might be able to take that incident and forget about it, but it comes out in different ways. It comes out at home. It comes out, with our children. It comes out in my story. It came out when I got hurt on the job and I was prescribed, opiates. I was like, wow, this is taking out and numbing everything else. So I don't have to feel those things that I didn't want to talk to somebody else about. And part of not talking is, you feel that you're going to be persecuted by, people within the department, or you're not going to get a raise, or you're going to look weak, and it's not just within that career. I think it's in men in general. And we stuff everything inside. And when we stuff things inside, it comes out in different ways.
I couldn't imagine. I mean, I would come home, my wife's like, take the garbage out. I'd be like, take the garbage out. Like, it's like you'd expect them to know, like, what, but
I had a rough day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
the hours themselves, I remember when I became canine, I was working, 6 to like 3 a.m. or whatever the shift was. And a lot of guys do overnights, working overnights. I don't care where you're from. That takes over time. That takes a toll on you. And especially living in Massachusetts, I live in Florida now, and I love it down here. I never understood until I got here or looked back and reflected how much the climate affects your psyche. Up in Massachusetts, I can remember growing up, I never thought of it. 8 months out of the year, it's gloomy and gray. You know what I mean, that doesn't, if you're having a bad day, that really doesn't help me much,
No.
or the rain where it rains all day.
Yeah.
Down in Florida, I could be having the worst day, that I've ever had, but yet the sun's beaming down on you. It helps in different ways, plus a lot of the other stuff that I do today that I never did before. But
is it common or not common? Do cops, do they have therapists work with, you know what I mean? Like, do they work on themselves, or is that something that's kind of?
So I think more today, it's more open back now than when I was, on the job. Back when I was on the job, you have EAPs. I mean, you have different people that you can turn to. But the thing is at least for me, I can speak for myself. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I had it under control. I mean, I was going to figure it out. I mean, and that's the deep rooted stuff. Like, I can remember one of my first accidents was seeing, a dad drop his phone and went head on into a box truck with his toddler in the side. Can you imagine showing up to that scene? The dad had just a scratch on him, and, unfortunately not so much for the toddler. I mean, there's a lot of things that we see and that we have to deal with emotionally on the inside, and at the time that happened, I mean, I was just having kids myself. So it hit on a different level, and we tried to, hold that stuff in. And people, they would offer, they offer, grief counseling, this and that. But how many of us actually take advantage of that? You mean?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, it's the male macho song and dance. We always hear that, we don't want to be perceived as weak. We can't show weakness. And it actually, we know today it takes strength to do that. But so, you get out of college, you join the force, you get going, see all this bad shit, get hurt, you take the biscuits, you get on Percocet, right? You started with Percocet. And then did you eventually graduate to stronger drugs?
Oh, yeah. First of all, I was put on Percocet, went over, it was the Oxycontin time of where they were dishing those.
I was right with you.
Yeah. And I mean, I had no business being on such powerful drugs. But like me, I took those drugs at the time to go back to work faster. To do the things that I wanted. I was a washed up athlete. I'm going to play, softball. I want to go do the things I wanted to do. And I was impatient. I wasn't going to sit on a couch and heal. So I took these things. And when I took these things, they allowed me to do the things that I wanted to do. So as I'm doing this, I'm going through them like crazy. And because of my status in the community and who I was, they gave me more and more. Until, and it started to happen was subconsciously, though I was doing the things I wanted to do, somewhere in me it was blocking out my ex-wife who was always in my ear. It was blocking out the lieutenant that was always riding me. It was blocking out those feelings of stuff that I never wanted to talk about. For failure of thinking that if I did talk about these things, it would stop me from getting a raise, or it'd make me look weak, or it would hinder me in some capacity that I didn't want to be looked at in that type of way. But all that inner stuff was going on. So it's speedballed very quickly, and red flags would pop out, but I didn't see them. Like small, minute things, I was taking more and more. And then it got to a point where, after a midnight shift, if I was out of pills, I would go to the local hospital in full uniform complaining about my knee, and they'd give me what I wanted because of who I was. There was no questions asked. And yeah, it transpired. The long and the short, my whole story, as you'll read in my book as well, it went from taking pills orally to sniffing pills, to injecting pills to heroin in the end.
Yeah. And again, like myself, I ended up in the same place. But when I was in the beginning stages of using the drugs and not understanding what addiction's about, and the way we graduate to more pills, and then the next drug, and then stronger drug, and then the heroin. When you're on that path and you're saying to yourself, I know I got a problem. I want to kick this shit. I want to get off it. And then you try that first time. You try and get off the fucking pills the first time. Explain to me just how painful that was for you and saying, what the fuck is going on with me here? Because I've done it, and I've tried to kick it on my own. I'm like, there's only one thing that's going to take this pain away. More pills.
And you can't be more right, Chris. Before I graduated to, those stronger drugs or even injecting anything, taking those pills orally, I wanted to stop, but nobody told me when they first gave me, that bottle of pills that, hey, if you take this and in 30 days when you stop taking it, that you're going to feel the way that I felt. The first time that I ran out, I was like, my legs were cramping. I was foggy. I was irritable. It was like I was sweating. I was so uncomfortable. And I had no idea, back then, maybe I wasn't looking at it. I had no idea what was going on. I just knew if I took something, it was going to make me feel better instantly. So I could continue to do the things that I needed to do as a productive member of society. And that's how it started. Yeah. And the big thing is I had kids too. So my kids were like, 3 and 1 at the time when it first went down. And, when I was on something, I was father of the year. I was hanging out by the tree, like being playful, like all this stuff. When I didn't have anything, it was like, here's a bowl of cereal. And I'd go lay down or try to do whatever it is to try to get through it. But eventually it always led to me, trying to find more.
Yeah, no, I have a little bit of experience myself. I think it's, father of the year. I got to a point where I was like inventing things. I had all these you know what I mean? Like I was like, I would put like gym clothes and stuff by the door. Like I'm starting to work out tomorrow, but tomorrow would come and I'd be like, fuck.
Yeah.
No chance. And then you don't, people, the mental desperation, like I couldn't plan something 2 weeks from now unless I knew I had enough on me. Right.
Yeah, there was no vacations, was it, Tim? Right. We couldn't go.
No.
Like I remember like it's yesterday. And then you want to talk about the progression, the dishonesty that comes. A lot of my stuff, my poor ex-wife, it got to a point where, I was getting it the way I was getting it because who I was. But back then I got shut off by the insurance company. They red flagged me. So they're like, you're getting way too much stuff from like several different doctors. What's going on? You can't have any more until a certain date. I'm like, a certain date? I can't get by the next 24 hours. Right? Yeah. So then what happened was I started getting it from people I went to high school with that I trusted. That I, or at least I thought I trusted, that I could buy them off of them. Now I had to come out of pocket for these things. So when you share a bank account with your wife and your finances are going out, let me tell you what, it got, I got very creative. As a police officer, we have bulletproof vests that we wear. We have boots. We have new equipment that we have to get. I was telling her every lie under the sun. Needed this, I needed that, needed this. 3 months later, she's looking at me. I'm still walking around in the raggedy old shit that I had.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, who am I fooling? Who am I fooling?
You live I think that was one of the biggest reliefs was like the monkey off the back of like, I don't live this double. You're living a double life, right? Like it is the number one priority. And it controls you and it lies to you. Like you said, it starts off like I had thought the same thing. Dad of the year, I talked to more people. It gave me like energy. Almost,
me too.
Right. Like, and then by the end of it, it was like, I was like either dad of the year or like suicidal. Like I didn't, it's the devil for sure.
So that was the early days. Let's not talk about going into the dark of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
So you're working still, you're addicted to pain medication and, you're going around town, you get up in the hospital, you're shut off by an insurance company, starting to dig into your pocket now. You're going to supposed friends. How long does it take before this gets back to the police chief?
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. The police chief, he was a new chief who came in like my third year. So he was with me for about 5 or 6 years, and we were actually like really close. So he wasn't just the police chief. He was a close personal friend of mine. And he what happened was somebody got pinched on something, and I guess I was at a house, and when he got pinched on something, he brought up the fact that he had heard that I was getting some stuff from somewhere else. So the chief brought me in. He actually sat me down. It was one-on-one, and he says, "Hey, Joe," he goes, "we got this guy who's saying some things, and I think he's crazy, like this and that." And me, being the good addict that I was at the time, I covered all the facts and everything else. He goes, "If it is true, Joe," he goes, "we can get you some help. We can get you out of this." But the thing is the only thing that I heard at that point in time, Chris, is when I got confronted with that,
I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah, the guilt, the shame, and everything that was in me, it was protect at all cost. I was about to lose everything I had ever worked for, and looking back at it now, they were just looking to get me some help. I probably would have kept my job if I stayed the straight line. But all I heard was, "Tell me everything you know so I can fire your ass." That's all. Yeah. That's all I heard. And this was coming from somebody who wasn't just the chief; it was a friend. I trusted nobody when it came to that. Nobody. So what happened was he goes, "All right," and he goes, "I believe you." Like, he had no reason not to, And there was an investigation done. They actually put the guy on a polygraph, and he passed it. And I still held on to that thing's wrong. Mm-hmm. I was not going to come forth. So eventually I ended up resigning from my job. And
how long from that meeting till you resigned?
I'm guessing a little bit here. I think it probably 2 months.
Okay, so it was pretty quick.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
They got to the bottom of it.
Yeah, they got to the bottom of it real quick. I think they took me off the road, right away while it was under investigation. And then, here's another thing too, is like, even when I did resign, they're like, "Go get some help," even though I'm denying it and everything else. Get some help. And if you need some recommendations, you get your stuff together. Cause I was good at my job. I was a high ranking, officer, obviously people felt bad for me in terms of what I was going through. And, all I did is, when I resigned, my wife left me, took the kids, emptied the bank accounts. I had, at that time of my life, was probably the lowest point of my entire life. Everything that I had done up to that point, being the big fish in the little pond in terms of an athlete, I was always put on a pedestal. I was always in the paper for good things, and then all of a sudden I had nothing, absolutely nothing, or at least that's how I felt, and people pushed me away. They were probably pushing me away to see how I would respond. And you know what? The attitude came in where I'm like, "Oh, I'll show you." But the problem is, the only one I showed was myself, because the wheels ended up falling off the bus.
Yeah. So you leave the job, and then things go downhill from there. The progression of the disease certainly already taken hold, but then it goes to another level. Explain to me what that was like. And then you end up getting arrested. How long after you leave the police force are you now going to be going to court, because you got to make some money, so you're going to sell some of these pills?
I think it was about 8 months or so. Because what happened, what transpired was, I finally gave in and said, "I'll go to detox." Because it was kind of out there a little bit, and I personally had nowhere to go. And when I walked into detox for the first day, the lady said there, and I won't mention the place, she goes, "You sure you want to be here?" Because she knew who I was. Yeah. And she didn't know how that would take by me going in somewhere. I'm like, I go, "It doesn't matter. That job's gone." So I went in, and when I went in, that's when I got served with like a restraining order from my ex-wife. Like, I felt like I was a dog that had just got kicked down. But on the other hand too, she was finding out every lie I had told to cover up my addiction while I was trying to take care of myself. So I get it as well. It was just a very tough time in my life. And what happened is literally what happens to a lot of us. The whole world was casting me out and saying this and saying that. And, I go into detox for the first time, and I run into a young woman who's going through the same things that I'm going through. and is telling me how life is okay. And it's the first time I ever shared what was going on with me. So there was an instant connection. Yeah, man, there was an instant connection, with that. And because I was feeling so alone, and they always say how you're trying to fill that empty space, that's what I did. And unfortunately, this lady was far worse off than I was, and I had the finances, through credit and this and that. So it got ugly. When the finances ran out, I did what everyone else did to get what they needed. And eventually I got caught with a significant amount of weight. They charged me with trafficking. And this was after I was getting warned by people. At that point in my life, I was just hoping.
They ain't going to catch me.
Yeah.
They're not going to catch me.
But it wasn't even just that, Chris. It was more like, I didn't think I'd live to pay the consequences of anything. I didn't want to live. I had lost everything. Like, I saw no hope, and I didn't care about my actions because I didn't think that they'd say, well, this might come back and this come back. And I would hold on to, well, these two things ain't coming back, so I don't care. And I'd wake up the next day and I'd be like, oh, I got to do this all over again. I mean, I did not want to wake up, but I didn't have the balls to do it myself. You know what I mean? And it was a very, very sad, so yeah, I walk into court. They raided the house. They took me in cuffs. Now everything goes on the front page of the paper everywhere across Massachusetts because of
former police officer.
Yeah. It was, I had reporters jumping out from behind trees trying to interview me after I got bailed. I had everyone, the town in which I grew up with in the surrounding area, most of my life, was all good things. And then the first time in my life, the front page of the paper, and I couldn't go anywhere without anyone knowing me. You know how the Cape is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Small town, and Falmouth, certainly is, everybody certainly knows everybody's business, but it can be that way. But so you end up going to court. You end up, judge ends up sentencing you to the House of Correction. What, 2.5 years?
Yeah, actually, I went to court, released on personal recognizance, and then over like a 6-month period of time, I didn't get brought in or indicted for 6 months later. I honestly think they were giving me the opportunity to get my stuff together somewhat. And what happened is once that happened, you think I would have put up the white flag and said, I got to do something? Nope. I went even harder. And every time I'd go back into court, to hear to that one charge, there'd be like 10 other charges for nonviolent, criminal drug offenses. You know what I mean? Like credit cards, that or doing this. And finally the judge said, are you guys going to indict this guy or what? You know what I mean? And finally they indicted me on March 10th of, March 10th of 2010. And the judge looked at me and he says, I don't know how you've been on the road this long. He goes, and they sentenced me that day, or they gave me no bail, and the sentence was later.
So you go.
So you were using actively up to this point, all the way up to this point,
all the way up to that point.
So like detox for you, was it in jail?
Yeah, over that period of time between up until the point I was sent, detox to me was just a place because I had no place to go to stop to try to, get some clarity. But every time I went in, my biggest problem was self-forgiveness. I could not forgive myself. And unfortunately, obviously with my background and who I was and my upbringing and all that, I felt alone. I felt that nothing was coming back. That's the best way that I can put it up is I did not want to live anymore, but I just didn't have the balls to do it myself. So I know jail doesn't work for a lot of people. Jail worked for me because it gave me the time I was unwilling to give myself.
Right. So I was going to ask you, obviously jail's got to be such a negative experience, but was it a turning point for you?
It was. You can imagine being a police officer that goes to prison.
Oh yeah.
It's I remember going in, and the first day, my law enforcement training kicks in, As soon as I get in there, I'm looking around, I'm scanning because I'm looking for, anywhere there might be a fire, so to speak, or what's going to be coming at me. And no one really said anything to me. But then I sat down and I ran into a kid from my hometown, and I look over and he goes, I know who the fuck you are, right? And I looked at him, and here's my mentality popping up again is I don't really care at all. Yeah. And I forgot to tell you, when I first went in, they tried to PC me because of who I was.
Yeah.
But my mentality kicked in again is I don't want to be PC'd. I signed the waivers not to be PC'd, and I went into general pop.
So go ahead, Tim. Do you have something? Go. All right. I was going to say, so you say no PC, you go into general population. Now you got to fend for yourself. And what was that like? So you see that one kid, but I'm sure if that one kid knew, fucking word spreads fast in there. How did you take care of yourself in there?
The first 3 weeks were tough because I still thought that I could manipulate my way out. You know what I mean? I would call my parents. And my dad wasn't really talking to me. My mother was the only one, she was more of an enabler, but she loved me to death, and she only was doing what she thought she could do. And being the person that I was at the time, I'd be like, Ma, they're going to kill me in here. You need to find the money to raise, to get me out of here. I used every manipulation tactic that I could on anybody that would listen to me to try to get me out of there. And no one came for me. And, for the first time in my life, or at least in a long time, I couldn't manipulate my way out of a situation. And after probably a week, I accepted the fact that I wasn't getting out. I kept to myself the best I could, surround myself with the best possible guys I could inside. I continued on a routine. This is where God works in my life. I don't know how I survived that because there were instances where other blocks were yelling 5-0, 5-0, and guys that I was housed with, they'd say certain things, but I never had a huge issue in the beginning. And then I had the opportunity to go into the drug block. And I took that opportunity because I thought it was a way where the drug block was a little smaller.
Yeah.
I thought that I could go, and that's where an environment that I could probably control a little bit better than a big block.
Yeah.
And when I went into that, it opened my eyes to a lot of different things. It's the first time in my life that I had to take a hard look, at where I was, because how I looked at it was one day I'm on top of the world. The next day I'm sitting in a jail cell saying to myself, how the fuck did I get here? It was just like that. And, the thing is, I wasn't raised like that. A lot of those things, I had kids I missed, and while I was in prison, it started to change from why me to why not me, and I started to really do a lot of work on myself in there, reading a lot of positivity type of stuff and books and self-help. And, I got into the AA and the NA and whatever I could get myself into to pass time. But it was really, thinking about who I was and how that had happened and what I needed to do.
So how many months do you end up serving?
I did 19 months of a total incarceration. I ended up getting released. I was supposed to be 5 years of probation, but I think you remember that big Boston drug lab scandal?
Yeah.
So they dropped the probation. They told me I could retry my case and maybe get the stuff dropped. But they said if I retry it and I'm found guilty, I'd have to redo the time. I'm like, yeah, I'm all set. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I did 19 months and I got out. And that's when the real work started. Real work, because now all I ever knew was law enforcement. And now, like everyone that comes out of prison, and now I have a felony on my record. Nonviolent, but it's still a felony. Now, how am I supposed to use my college education or anything that I was good up to that point to get a job, that paid something that I thought was significant? What was I going to do with myself? My license was suspended because in the state of Massachusetts, that's what they do with drug charges. So you want to talk about, I've never felt so bare naked probably since birth.
Yeah. Did you, were you still like having cravings to use or like get back into
No. After 19 months, obviously emotionally when things aren't going my way.
Yeah. It's the easier thing to do, right? Like that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But wow.
Yeah. So, when I got out, I took the first job I ever took was a landscaping job. And not that, I had done landscaping my whole life as a teen, but, I was landscaping in the town I used to work in, cruises would come by.
Humbling.
Yeah. What's that?
It's humbling.
Oh, very. Cruises would go by and I'd hide behind trees so they didn't see me. My self purpose at that time, I didn't know what I was going to do or what was going to be an impact for me until I found some purpose, and that purpose was when I made the decision that I couldn't change any of the things that happened to me. I remembered who I was, and I'm saying, you know what if I can use this story to help out other people? Maybe by me being vulnerable, and recovering loudly, it can help those who are dying silently. Because I know there were others. I wasn't the first police officer who had just ever gone through this. I wasn't the first CEO who ever gone through this. The first professional hockey player who ever went through this. So it gave me, looking at people like yourself, Chris, or looking at other people, that had a stage. It's almost like a fallen leader type of thing. And I love that quote. It's like somebody took the same situation you're complaining about and they won with it. And it was inspiring to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That key word you used earlier is hope. That's, like giving someone, it's like you tell your story and it's like, maybe you can give someone hope, which is awesome. It's amazing.
But it goes even further, Chris, is like where my life really changed was when I actually left Massachusetts and came to Florida. That's where everything changed for me.
Well, they say there's no geographical cure, but anyway, you come out of prison and you felt naked. So you start getting clothed again. You get a job as a landscaper, so you throw a T-shirt on. Or do you put the underwear on first? The underwear. You got to put the undies on first.
Yeah.
And you start getting clothed again. And what's the next move for you? Florida, and then how does everything change? Because it's certainly the steadfastness, the perseverance, getting that second chance. When did that come for you?
So the first chance was I actually took a job at Gosnold. I worked there after landscaping for a little bit, and I had the background in degrees.
Tina, baby, I love Tina.
Martha, I love Martha. So I ended up taking a job there as like an RA, and eventually I became a counselor there. So I was a counselor there, and then when I transitioned from Gosnold to come down to Florida, it was after the death of my cousin who died in front of me. Excuse me. Died in front of me in a boating accident. And I had a small relapse because I allowed...
In Falmouth?
In Falmouth, yeah. In Falmouth, died in front of me. There was no drink or anything else. We were all having a family thing. The boat was anchored in the water in a lake. It didn't hold. The boat got away. We were treading water for 20 minutes, me and him in the water, and they finally got the boat started, but he had gone under. Another God moment in my life, and another example of why I do the things that I do for those people that I've lost. That meant a lot to me. But I ended up coming down to Florida probably a week after that. I just said, you know what? I can't, because of who I was and my status within that community, and because of, the athletic, all the awards and everything else, I could not escape my past there. I wasn't going to be more than a counselor at Gosnold. I wasn't going to be more than a landscaper. I wanted more. So I said, you know what? I had some friends in Florida. I came down here, and I started working in the treatment industry. And then I met my wife. which changed my entire life. First lady I ever dated in Florida. I ended up marrying her 6 months later.
Maritza.
Yeah, Maritza.
Now, where did you two meet?
We met at a cookout.
Okay.
One of my friends looked at me, and I looked at him. I go, I like her. He goes, you don't stand a chance. And if you know anything about us Boston guys, that's all we have to hear. So literally 6 months later, we were married, and now we have three beautiful children. Been married for 8 years. We own two multi-million-dollar, we own a wellness center and a training school. But rewinding back, she was a big change in my life, because at that point in my life, I literally had nothing materialistic, but I felt whole again. I did a lot of work on myself. I did the 12 steps. I did a very, very elaborate fourth step. And it was very easy for me because all my stuff was in the front page of the paper anyway. You know what I mean? For the most part.
Yeah.
And I found out who I was, and I started, working more in that environment. And she was doing a lot of different things like meditation and Reiki and yoga. And because I wanted, to be with her and do some things, I started doing some of the things I probably wouldn't have done for my egotistical, law enforcement type of thing. And you know what it is I actually enjoyed it. It brought me some peace and some calmness. So she opened the door to a world I was unfamiliar with, and it started to change me little by little. And then she said, she goes, hey, let's go get trained in NLP and take this course. And long story,
LP?
NLP. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. So basically, It's the roadmap to the mind. It's mindset work. When I took it, I went up there. It was more personal development for me, but you got certified in it to work with other people as well as coaches or, however you wanted to work with somebody. And it caught fire with me. It changed it. When I took practitioner, it made me a better father, a better human being, a better husband. Like, I loved it. So then I took it from practitioner to master practitioner. And then I became a trainer in it, both me and my wife. And that's what we do for a living is we travel the country. We speak everywhere, about mental health, substance abuse, or we work with high executive CEOs on how to establish their bottom line and increase revenue through the NLP sales process, or we work with a lot of people in coaching. But I loved it. It changed everything for me. And with my background of being undercover, interview, interrogation, command present, my law enforcement experience and everything that I learned in the 10 years of law enforcement, it brought all of that together and made me who I am today. So I thank my wife up and down for taking a chance on this guy that had nothing at one point and obviously saw something in me I didn't see in myself. And that guy that had no hope in the beginning, Tim, I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be sitting, here talking with you guys or even doing the things that I'm doing and traveling the country. And I used to hate that. You'll have what was the comment back in, AA back in the day is you'll have a life beyond means. I used to hate it because I'm like, that stuff's not coming back, buddy. I don't know if you know me. Right.
Yeah.
And today I have more than I ever had even prior to me sticking a pill in my mouth. My life is so much better, and it's better because the impact that I'm having on others out there. I work with 5 clients a day in terms of coaching, and there are a variety of different clients. Whether it's on sales and communication model, whether it's on personal development, you name it. We do it, and I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You found a new calling and certainly didn't do that alone. And I think that's one of the things with the addiction. It's difficult to ask for help for the addict, a lot of us anyway. But, I happen to be part of your breaking the chains of addictions and mental health back in May with you in Falmouth. So you went back to Falmouth. Now, I'm sure you've been back there before that, but this time you came back, everybody knew you were coming back because you were putting on that symposium, Breaking the Chains, Addiction and Mental Health. How different was it going back this time now? you're coming back to town to send a message. You're coming back to, try and bring awareness. Were you a little kind of nervous coming back?
I was, and it's funny. I speak all around the country, but I was looking forward to it, but also extremely nervous. And, to tell you, I can sum it up in one word, being 12 years removed from all that stuff that happened and coming back. And like you said, I'd been there plenty of times, mended a lot of friendships with the police department's friends, seeing my kids, this and that. It was closure for me. It was like that. It was closure. I mean, I felt like it was a point in my life that I had something to give back, to the town in which I caused some chaos, and it was like sitting up there and speaking and having you present, Chris, and having a lot of people from around the country that I become friends with, to be able to bring back something to that community to help out with what they have going on down there. It meant everything to me. And the funny part is all those newspapers that I was on the front page of back in 2008, 2009, I contacted all of them prior to going to Massachusetts. I said, hey, you guys wrote all kinds of stories about me back in 2009. How would you like to redo those articles? And all of them did it. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
It felt so good to be there. And it felt so good to, I don't know how much to sell it up, but it was just closure for me.
Yeah. And, that was good. It was awesome to be part of that. It was awesome to meet you and Maritza. And your kids obviously there, but, and then your dad. I could see your dad, how proud he was, because I went through the same thing with my dad. My dad watched me go through the addiction and the alcoholism, and when I got to the other side of it, to realize how proud he was to see me healthy and happy. And I saw that in your father. It was awesome. It was awesome.
And it's funny you say that, Chris, because, for me, being at the point in my life, I've been through a lot, and I can take a lot, but it meant a lot to me to be able to do that, for my dad, because he took a lot of flack. We share the same name. He talked about me for years in sports and this and that. And, those people that don't have good agendas finally had their turn to put their foot on my head, after him for all those years. And, to come back to show, where I was, how I had fallen, and how I had picked myself up to where I am today. And for him to have that ability for me to feel that and to, it meant everything to me. Brings tears to my eyes just thinking about it.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome stuff.
And you got the book that's coming out.
The Badge, Bars and Beyond. That's coming out the end of the month. Is it? Where can you get it? The book.
So basically, if you go to badgebarsbeyond.com, you put in your email, you'll get the first chapter for free. It'll tell you everything about me. But the book, despite the title of it, it's not just a book for, people that are struggling with substance use disorder or mental health. The book was written for, the fallen leader, the divorcee, the bankrupt professional. It's for people. It's a hero's journey type of story, but it's not just about my story. It's how I transformed my life and how I got, to be where I am today. To be a convicted felon, to build a multi-million-dollar business within the stigma of all of that, says a lot. At least I think it does.
No, it does. No question.
A lot of it is mindset. A lot of it's mindset. It's a lot of different strategies. And I tell everything in the book. And I'm very proud of the book. And people have been trying to get me to write it for years. And I just wasn't ready, to do it, because it's sort of like if I had wrote that book, 7 years ago, it probably would have been a lot different than when I wrote it, now. Not that I was lying. It's just the perspective change on things, the growth within me, how I perceive things differently, So, a lot of people called and asked, hey, am I mentioned in the book or this and that? Pretty funny. And
any bad shit?
Yeah. And And I said, no, it's not a book that was written to hurt anybody. It was written, it's my story from my perspective, that it's like a roadmap, a GPS system for those that, have been a fallen leader, that need a wake up call, and I hope people read it, but more importantly, I hope people learn from it.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. Tim, you're
I'm
going to pick up a copy, aren't you?
Yeah, no, for sure. This is incredible. I appreciate you sharing all this, obviously. What would be like kind of for someone that's in it, that wants to get out, because people don't realize that when you're like in the heart of that addiction, like most of the time, like we don't want to be doing that. Like we're suffering and, what would you say? Like, is it like a kind of a message to that person? Obviously the guy, for me, it would be like from my experience, it'd be like, you can't, there's no way, you can't get out of this alone. Like, you're not going to get out of this by yourself. I don't know. What would be kind of like your message, I guess?
Well, I think for me, I needed some hope and whether or not I could have hope in myself, I needed it from some other people to have hope in me, to show me the way. I'm not just talking about like a sponsor or an AA group. I'm talking about, personal development type of stuff. For me right now, I've had a coach for the past 7 years, a business coach, a life coach. I've had people that I can look to and turn to that don't like pat me on the back. They call me on my shit. That's what a true friend is. I used to have a lot of friends that would talk me over the ledge. Now I surround myself with people that are like, Joe, that might not be a good idea. Right. So it's surrounding yourself accordingly, but more importantly, I think a lot of us, and I like to speak just myself because I don't like to say what other people are going through. Yeah. But for me, it was all about personal forgiveness. It was forgiving myself. And for me, I'm into God. I was raised Catholic, but I'm just coming off a 4-day men's church retreat. So I'm spilling God left and right, and I'm fine with that. But it's unconditional love. We all make mistakes. Don't be defined by your mistakes, but be defined by your perseverance in overcoming those mistakes. Be an example. Stop saying why me. Start saying why not me. Like for me, maybe I went through everything I went through so my kids never have to go through it. I don't know. It's positive thinking.
It's like everything that happened to you has happened for you today, right?
Exactly.
Like, and for, I just, the guilt. Yeah, that's a phase. Like you got to get, like for me, I'm slowly kind of overcoming that where I look back and I'm like, you know what? That's who I fucking was.
Right.
I'm not that person today. And,
right.
and that does take a lot for me to realize that I do that only with other people. Like I can only, really believe that and be honest and with myself with help. So, it's once again, your story's amazing.
And Tim, there's power in taking ownership, because when you take ownership of something, you have the ability to do something about it. Fear, runs rampant through us. But if you run from something, it's still going to be there. Face it head on, take it on. Don't have expectations on stuff. Do the next right thing, because what expectations are, they're premeditated resentments. And that's what we get engulfed with that stuff. So my thing is I just try to be a better person today. I can't change any of that stuff from, 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was. But what I can do is be an example for my kids today. Like even my 14-year-old, he didn't know a lot of this until I told him when he was, around 10 years old. And you know what? I told him because I want him to be wary of drugs and alcohol. I want him to be wary of stress and how it affects you. I want him to be wary of where my road led, but also I think this power of my story to show him that, when you make a mistake, you own it. You pick yourself back up and you do the next right thing. There's power in that.
Yeah, and you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
We're not perfect. It's that progress, not perfection. I should apply this to my golf game though, because the expectations of what I think I'm going to shoot to resenting and hating the game of golf every round.
Well, Tim, if you go to obtainingmastery.com, we do work with golf pros.
Okay,
on the mindset.
That's why. Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah,
but it's great.
So there's hope. There's hope in my golf game, is what
Absolutely.
you're saying. All right.
But it's, you know what because we do a lot of coaching, and coaching is probably the most, it's the most available thing out there. You know what the problem is, though, is in order to, grab somebody for coaching, you need to have humility. Humility is the ability to ask for help, right? That doesn't mean that I'm better than you, Tim, or better than Chris. It just means that I might be stronger in one area. Do you know what I mean? It's like if I want to learn how to play hockey, I've never played in my life, right? Who am I going to ask? I'm going to go to Chris. I'm going to ask him about stuff. You know what I mean? There's certain things that, especially as men, we don't want to ask for help in anything. We'd rather, it's like me trying to fix something in the house. Let me tell you what, it's an ugly sight.
Yeah, I learn every day I'm wrong, how wrong I am. I still at times I'm like, it's just ingrained in us. We're like, I know what's best. And it's like, by the end of the day, I'm just like, sorry, babe, sorry, But you learn. You try not to make the same mistakes twice. And yeah, it's about progress. So
yeah,
it's awesome.
So it's amazing. We got that coming, Chris. The Addiction Revealed, you're on it as well. That launch.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that. I'd love to see that.
So it's they're launching November 8th. So there's 12 videos. There are 12 segments, 60 to 90 minute segments each. They're going to send me some of it on the 8th, so I'll make sure that you get it as well. So Addiction Revealed, who's done by Jeff Hayes Film Production, who did Fahrenheit 9/11. They're about to launch Addiction Revealed, which I'm very excited about. So it's the book, Addiction Revealed, and we got a lot of different events going on across the country.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that for sure. I forgot all about it, actually. I remember doing the interview, and they were really nice people. Listen, Joe, I wish you nothing but the best with the book and moving forward with your business and your life. Maritza, say hello.
Well,
and just a awesome story of picking yourself up, getting back on your feet, putting your head down, and moving ahead. And that's just it's a great story. And there's more of these stories are going to be made for sure with other people in our lives. We know addiction runs rampant in this country. Yeah, it's crazy. So, again, thanks for coming on with us today. Really appreciate it. And good luck moving forward, my friend.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. That was awesome.